We have gone over all 27 trade agreements. Not one of them has kept their promise to the American worker. Not one.
For us to survive as a nation, we better start manufacturing what we consume.
We absolutely need to change our view because what we've been doing has not worked. We've reaped a disaster.
The world held its collective breath as we witnessed the near collapse of the international banking system and the meltdown of the global economy. While Congress threw a lifeline to their Wall Street banking buddies, they turned a deaf ear to cries of millions of unemployed workers who are sinking under the weight of their financial obligations, trapped in the economic quicksand the pundits and politicians glibly call the Great Recession.
I don't know what we're going to do, how I'm going to be able to take care of my kids.
I stayed around to see the last truck run off the line.
You kind of feel angry as you're just sort of disposed of, and you feel like no one really cares about you.
Are we going to lose our home? What are we going to do for insurance? What are we going to do for food? You know, and these are questions that you never think that you'd ask yourself.
But true to its name, this Great Recession is no run-of-the-mill economic downturn. Never in American history have we had a recession this deep, with a recovery this flat. We are facing a structural employment crisis that will decimate our future prosperity if we don't act.
These numbers that have persisted throughout the recession are just unprecedented. And they're unprecedented back to the Depression. That this phenomenon of structural breakage of what used to be such a clearly understood American dream around employment demands that we not approach it as a cyclical phenomenon that's going to cure itself if we just hold our breaths, but rather that it's a structural nightmare that takes severe attention.
In Canada, as in the US, the younger generation is worse off than their parents. Young workers have higher unemployment rates. The ones that are employed are basically doing contract work, low wage, minimum wage, that kind of work. You cannot get a good, solid job that leads you into a career. Prime Minister Mulroney said that the free trade agreement was all about jobs, jobs, jobs. Unfortunately, there were jobs, jobs, jobs in Mexico, in Asia, in the Philippines, not in Canada.
For years, North American politicians have aided and abetted the willful destruction of the continent's industrial base by pursuing an unfettered free trade policy that enables multinational corporations to fatten their bottom line by shipping our jobs overseas. Losing these good-paying manufacturing jobs is causing an ever-accelerating downward spiral that is jeopardizing the very existence of the middle class. That's because, besides paying good wages and benefits, manufacturing consistently outpaces other sectors in productivity growth and is responsible for 70% of all business research and development.
Let's look at an industrial economy and the service jobs in an industrial economy. The best service jobs are the jobs that serve industry. They're accounting, they're legal, they're HR, they're R&D, they're design. There's software, there's IT, there's maintenance. Those are good service jobs. Those are the jobs that you want. So when you lose a factory, and it's like a maelstrom, it's like a storm, it's like a whirlpool, and it pulls everything into this hole, you lose entire supply chain of companies, you lose tremendous capabilities in terms of engineering capabilities, R&D capabilities, design capabilities. You lose the entire network, the whole fabric of the supply chain that goes with that industry or with that company or with that plant.
In addition to productivity and innovation, manufacturing fosters job growth throughout the economy.
if you don't have manufacturing. I mean, I don't see how it works. To me, it's a matter of mathematics. The numbers just don't add up. You will not have enough jobs paying enough money to provide the purchasing power that consumers need to keep a world-class economy going.
If this country doesn't have at least 1 out of 5, at least 1 out of 5 women and men in manufacturing against total employment, we will fail.
If we don't start producing at least some of what we consume, we will continue to ship our jobs and our wealth overseas to those who are doing so. All you have to do is look at China and ask, why are they so successful? Because they've embraced a service economy? I don't think so. They have fully embraced, completely, entirely, wholeheartedly, throughout the entire culture, embraced manufacturing and production of goods. And they're selling them to us. And as they sell them to us, we send them our money and our wealth and our future. And, you know, we sit here broke.
Yet every day that goes by, we continue to hemorrhage manufacturing jobs. And our elected leaders act clueless, blissfully content to have us float rudderless through the tempest of global trade.
Every nation is incredibly concerned about jobs and creating good jobs. Jobs that pay well, and that can support a family, that take people out of poverty. I think we have one of the few nations that doesn't really focus on this. I mean, I'm in Washington, I cover Congress, and I can count on one hand the amount of times over the course of a year that they're on the Senate floor talking about jobs. It's hardly ever discussed in the United States. It's just not really even part of the debate.
Canadian politicians haven't shown themselves any more interested or capable of protecting Canadian workers or Canadian jobs. Frankly, in some cases where there's been bailouts or support provided for corporations, at the end of the day, the corporations still shut down, and there have been no consequences.
As we drift, our competition grows stronger, our options wither, and millions of hard-working people suffer intolerable hardships.
So workers, domestic producers, domestic manufacturers have had little voice in the development of policy that would generate a robust industry. And the people who control that debate are the importers, the retailers, the financial people, the multinational companies that are doing very, very well. When they outsource their production, they become more profitable. When they lay off workers, their stock goes up.
So make no mistake, this free trade agenda is not merely poor policy or misguided politics. It is a ruthlessly systematic campaign carried out by an ever more politically powerful army of multinational corporations to cut costs by driving down wages and abolishing workers' rights.
I think it's been made pretty clear that the corporations and the executives running these corporations do not care about that at all. Workers are now disposable, and anyone who doesn't recognize that has to have been walking around with their eyes closed for the past 30 years.
One of the saddest things for me is how often we blame the women and men who are workers in America for our trade deficit, for the malaise of our economy, even in the recovery of Detroit. If you remember, what we did is we pointed fingers at the women and men on the line, at GM, at Chrysler, and said, you know, it's your fault. You make too much money. That's the reason why we're not competitive.
I don't think there is any truth to the argument that U.S. wages are too high to sustain a manufacturing base, and that high wages are the reason why manufacturing has been offshored. Because our manufacturing wages are at the low to mid-level among advanced industrial countries, and they are lower than manufacturing wages in Germany, Sweden, and Denmark.
The first thing we need to recognize is that what we've been doing for the longest time has not been working. It has not been benefiting ordinary working men and women, and it has not been benefiting the country as a whole. So we need new ways of thinking. And means, almost by definition, that you have to establish some sort of industrial policy, that you need a strategy going forward.
Yet according to Wall Street and the economic elites, the largest economy in the world, with one of the most complex, globally interdependent supply chains, has no need of a cohesive national industrial policy. They go so far as to call an organized approach socialism.
A national manufacturing policy is not central planning. A national manufacturing policy is largely about solving problems that markets themselves don't solve adequately.
We're not talking socialism, and that's just ridiculous. We're talking common sense, that we have to have a plan to put Americans to work, to get the economy back in order, to rebuild the purchasing power of American citizens so that there is enough money being spent in an economy in which consumer spending is 70% of GDP to get enough purchasing power to make that work going forward.
Creating jobs must be our #1 priority. And we can't wait any longer. It's time we made our government stand up for North American manufacturing. But revitalizing our manufacturing sector will require breaking the corporate stranglehold on Congress. And that means all of us getting engaged. All of us standing up and fighting for North American jobs and North American workers.
Seeing ourselves as competitors doesn't help us. Seeing ourselves as brothers and sisters gives us an opportunity to fight back against the corporations.
If we're going to win this fight, the first thing we have to realize is that all workers are in this fight together. That is essential.